Thank you so much. It's such a full house. I love it. This is what I like to call a private function. Right. Good afternoon, everyone, and welcome to the Power of Inclusivity, Elevating Diverse Stories. As we gather here, we recognize the profound impact that stories have in shaping our understanding of the world and each other. Stories are not just narratives, they are the threads that weave our fabric of our shared humanity. They inform our beliefs, challenge our perspectives, and inspire change. And today, I have a wonderful panel with me, so please help me welcome Athenkosi Kwinana, a visual arts activist. Give them a little bit of a wave. Taryn Tomlinson, media personality, writer, social innovator, and entrepreneur. Love that. Amelka Patel, filmmaker and founder of Canva Collective. Varen Vadivelu, producer. Is that right?
Producer-director.
Producer-director, I'm so sorry. And musician, Mishimo. Right. So, about the power of inclusivity, I wanted to start this panel off just a little bit differently. Any panelist can answer. I want all of you to answer this one. Please tell us something that nobody knows about you. Who's going to start? I think Varen can start.
I'm secretly unattractive. I know it's crazy. I'm not sure, but I'm kidding.
Secretly unattractive.
Yeah.
Nice. Let's move down the line.
Wow, okay. I can't swim.
Can't swim.
You can't.
I can help you out with that.
I'm a caffeine addict. Yeah. I love my
Caffeine
coffee.
addict.
Yeah, I love my coffee. I'm a coffee lover.
You're a coffee lover. That's a good one. I speak Spanish.
Hola.
Wow.
Hola, chica. ¿Cómo estás? So I like that. I don't speak Spanish. Jabaz, when he said I must show this, so he's saying that I like to drink wine, but I think everybody knows that. So that's not something that... that's not a secret, Jabal.
You and me both. We'll meet up later for a quick
Well,
ride.
yeah, afterwards. I suppose like the lady, I'm a fellow linguist, I can speak Italian.
Wonderful.
Okay.
So that's our panel, ladies and gentlemen. We're going to get into the discussion now. Like I said, questions are for all of them. Whoever wants to jump in may jump in, and that's how we will get the ball rolling today. So, first question that I have for you all. Can you share a moment where inclusivity transformed a project you were involved in?
Yeah, I can share that. Just it jumps out at me. So I had the honor. I was a board member of a production company, and one of the things that they really looked to instill was inclusion, also on the back end. So we had a project called the Submachine, where we actually hired and trained persons with disabilities to create the subtitles for some SABC shows. So that part I was really, really, excited about, because it wasn't just creating the subtitles, it was also ensuring that we actually gave that employment opportunity to persons with disabilities.
It's fantastic. I think that's very needed. We don't get a lot of that, you know. There are a lot of barriers still in the way. But I wanted to ask, what are some of the biggest barriers to achieving true inclusivity in the industry?
I think one of the issues around, especially from a film perspective, Veron, you can probably testify to this, is development and research funding, because a lot of money is given to people that can make commercially viable content that, give people what they want. They want soapies, they want it. But more interesting content, and content that can speak to a wider variety of audiences, often don't get that initial funding that is needed just to kind of get your project off the ground and take it then to other funders. So I think that's a big stumbling block for content that is inclusive, is is just getting that like initial funding. The other thing is a lot of people that have disabilities of various sorts come also from economically vulnerable situations, and so we don't have the kind of capacity to simply dedicate 3 months of our lives or 6 months of our lives developing a project.
Absolutely.
So to give people that foot into the door that says, for the next 6 months, you write a film script, or you research this, or you come up with a fashion concept or whatever, I think that would be hugely beneficial to creating more inclusive content.
Absolutely. Anybody else like to add something to that?
I would like to add something. Can you guys hear me? Sorry about that. In the arts sector, I would have to say it's a physical accessibility. So most places tend to have accessible restrooms, exhibition spaces in terms of like your entrance and your elevators. But even though that is for a different group of persons with disabilities, other individuals with disabilities really struggle in terms of bright areas. So those are the type of stuff we run into. And also there's a tendency where our work is seen as inspirational and not really valued for its value and originality. I think those are some of the barriers that I have as an artist who has a disability.
So you feel like it's not held in the same regard as...
Yes. It's like, wow, my child. Yeah.
Actually, it should stand up on its own merit.
Yeah.
Absolutely, I like that. Question number 3, for whoever wants to answer it. How can we ensure that inclusivity isn't just a trend, but a lasting change?
Policy. Has to be policy. I mean, once it's on paper, then people take it seriously. And once you mandate it to do things, once you mandate it to accommodate us, then that's where change happens. I mean, like stuff like this is great, us talking, but do we care about talking or do we care about action? Like, but this is meant to obviously inspire action, you know? I guess you have to put it on paper, and you have to, the people that are in the positions of power to make change have to not give us just a response, they have to give us action. You know, it's one thing just saying like, we support you, but what is the support? Like, we need actual support, we need action, we need, just about actioning actual like procedures, policies and stuff to support us, accommodate us, as well as to, you know, include us. I mean, it's about inclusivity, but often as people with disabilities, you're marginalized. You know, you're segregated, you're often like put to the side. And we just want to be a part of the party. We just want to be a part of with everyone else. As much as we're different, we're the same. But just understand we're different, but we just like you know? So, yeah.
And do you feel like that being put into policy is something that is achievable in the near future, or is it something that's still far off?
It doesn't matter whether it's achievable, we have to get it done. Like, we have to get it done. I mean, support for artists with disabilities is at a point where, like, we have to action it. There's no two ways about it. You know, you can't think with hope. You gotta think to act. You know, so this is the time we have to make the change. You know, it has to be the time.
Absolutely. Thank you. So, can anybody say, how has the concept of inclusivity evolved in the media industry over the past decade? Has it?
I think so. There's been more diversity in terms of representation. Now there's films out there where people with disabilities are featured. I also like the fact that, yes, there's been representation of persons with disabilities for the longest time, but it's how it's done, and it's better. Also like the fact that organizations now are actually working with disability, individuals and organizations as well. So I've seen the change. I mean, as an artist, galleries now are actually supporting disabled artists and artists from diverse backgrounds, which is pretty amazing, yeah.
Yeah, just to add to that as well, I agree with you, Athenkosi. There definitely is a massive change. I think the fact that we are here today having this discussion is testament to that change. However, I find also a lot of things that still, and I suppose this is what the platform of the media, but there's still a lot of stigmatization within the minds of people that work within the industry. So yet a lot of changes might come down because it's mandated, but there's still a lot of, then it's mandated, but then there's still a lot of blockages once you are actually, you know, on the ground, so to speak.
Anyone else want to add to that?
No. I'm actually interested to know what you think can be done about getting people on the ground, the people in the industry, to be a little bit more aware. Or
Yeah, I definitely think, once again, coming down to industry, as we were speaking about, it definitely is education. It definitely is training and education for people. I somehow think that, because disability inclusion is it's a topic that really affects so many aspects of, within an industry. I almost think that every industry should have training exactly on disability inclusion, because it affects everybody. In every industry, you're going to have persons with disabilities. Changing that mindset, working with organizations such as RX Africa, who would then put a person with a disability, to lead a discussion. All these minute changes are going to start making the difference, and we really definitely need to see that. But I think as content creators, we also have to not shy away from disability, include persons with disabilities within the show. If you've got, what society looks like, we're a homogenous group of people, and so in TV as well, we should see that. And so I think that producers and directors bring in various people, and for heaven's sake, don't use able-bodied people to create, to stand in roles for persons with disabilities. It's ridiculous. And this just goes to that discrimination or that stereotype. So it's like, why do you need an able-bodied person to sit in a wheelchair? There are plenty of us around. We would also like to be on TV. But yeah, not taking shortcuts.
I think that also ties into having, like, for example, cisgendered actors playing trans characters and taking those chances away from people who are able to play those roles.
Authentically.
Yeah.
But just to add to that, I mean, it's important that when we have discussions with these people, is like, at face value, people will assume that people with disabilities are just going to make the production harder, right? I think what's important in terms of the education is you have to educate the positives of having people with disabilities involved. Like we're launching today, Dawn, the Disability Audiovisual Workers Network, and it's all about that. It's all about like educating people on us, what's the benefits, and also accommodation. Like, we have benefits, but you need to accommodate to get those benefits. It's a two-way thing. But it's all about education. I think once people understand us better, and we force them to understand us, you can't be like, you have to be forceful about this. Just through education, I think we're going to make a lot of progress.
Yeah. I think a lot of it ties into this next question is, how has inclusive casting changed the way stories are told in film and television?
But I think back to that story is that authenticity, when you cast the right people for the right, for the role, and also to bring back again into that, it was a few years ago I was watching BBC, and I think for me they were the broadcasters that really were the most forward thinking when it came to inclusion, where you could watch the news, and the news anchor was a person with a disability. She only had one arm. No one cared that she was the news anchor. That was her role. That's what she did. And BBC had a whole lot of programming where people were simply hired because of who they are. That's what inclusion looked like. Inclusion is not a disabled person leading a disability rights show. That's what I did. That's wonderful. We were on TV. That's not inclusion. Inclusion is having a person with a disability interact and be chosen on merit.
And not just to fill a quota.
And not just to fill a quota.
Absolutely. Are there any global examples of inclusivity in media that you believe we should be paying more attention to?
If I can add, there's a modeling agency that I came across. It's called ZBD, and they work with marginalized communities in that they work with individuals with disabilities and the LGBT plus community. And I think that's amazing because we've been so underrepresented for a very long time and exploited, but they go about it the right way, and I love it so much.
I love that. Anybody else have anything to add?
No, I think for my example was the BBC, who I really think is they've done a good job in the broadcasting, space. to make sure that it's accessible, and as well as Jabbar spoke about earlier on, you know, the subtitles, making sure that subtitles are there for people to actually access that information.
And I think a lot of the issue is access. It's not just for the creators, it's for the consumer as well. How are the audiences accessing?
Our film where Mish is the protagonist, a musician who's visually impaired and gradually losing his eyesight, was funded by one of the main funders was the KZN Film Commission, and they also offered us to do the audio descriptions, and they offered us to do subtitling, specialized subtitling, and so all of that was also offered by the Film Commission. So that was a really great thing to see that is happening at a grant level in our country.
But I suppose there's still a lot more that can be done. But baby steps, I guess.
100%.
But do we think baby steps is a cop-out?
Yes. Because baby steps and budget. Both with the bees. But bullshit. I call bullshit.
Yeah.
But absolutely, because as we said, whatever you prioritize, everything, look how in our country when we needed to prioritize going on from 1994 into 1995, and COVID, another prime example, water shortages, there is never budget.
Yeah.
But when you prioritize it, we have to make the budget available. And I think that the no budget or the baby steps has just been a bit, it's just been a little bit too long in the making.
That's very true. I feel like a lot of the time we are supposed to feel okay with the baby step. It's happening.
Be grateful.
Be grateful, yeah. Okay, we're giving you a little bit, and just because of that, you should just be like, thank you so much.
For the next 10 years.
Yeah, where it should be a bigger thing. Right. How do you think artists can balance creative freedom with the responsibility to be inclusive? Do you think there should be a responsibility for inclusivity?
Yes, I do think so. And I think in terms of creating their craft, they need to be respectful towards other artists. They should be willing to learn and actually be able to take criticism as well. But there should be a balance there. Yeah. So I agree.
I don't think they're at odds with each other. I think, if you tell South African stories well, and you include all of the stories that exist in our country, then it would be an inclusive film in this case, because I'm a filmmaker. But our country is so diverse, and there are so many incredible stories that if you just go about telling those stories authentically, then you're going to be, by nature inclusive. And also, our audiences want to see more inclusive content. I think we dumb down our audiences and we're like, no, they just want to see American-style content. But, actually give our audiences some credit, make inclusive content, and you'll see how people kind of really resonate with it, because everyone knows people that are sort of seen as different, or everyone's got that experience of having been different themselves. Maybe not physically, maybe they don't have but they were excluded in some aspect of their life at some point, and so everyone can resonate with those stories, and I think so they're not necessarily at odds with each other. I certainly didn't feel with Mishi's story I have to balance my creativity with telling that was the story, and having Mishi was so incredible and made my story so incredible that they just naturally fitted together.
Yeah, I think that people are ready for stories, and
It's a tricky thing, I feel like, because inclusivity can be a very triggering word for a filmmaker. Because it's like, now I'm forced to go outside of my story, all these different things. But I think it comes to a larger issue of, in terms of the stories in South Africa, is we get told to make what's marketable. How many panels are talking about it?
Yeah.
Being told what's marketable, what people want to see. But we're not happy with what people want to see. We want to tell original stuff, authentic things. But that's not what's being shown. And that's where the inclusivity comes from, is a lot of stories that aren't being told are inclusive. By nature, they are different. That's why they're not accepted. So I think once we start moving away from this thing of it's a numbers game. This is a business end of the day. But that's what will change is give the storytellers the opportunity to tell authentic stories, stories that they know. Because all of us know a disabled person in our lives, all of us. And as filmmakers, if you're a good writer, you're going to write from what you know. So you're going to include those people in some way, shape, or form. I mean, we have family members that are these people, you know? So I think once we start moving away from just focusing on what people want, you know, there's a Steve Jobs quote that somebody paraphrased, but then they contradicted themselves. But it's like people don't know what they want until you show it to them. So I think that's what you're all aiming for generally. And it comes within that. I think that's why the triggering thing comes from inclusivity. Because you're you're trying to include something in a commercially viable product. And it's going to clash. Commerciality and art, they kind of like got a weird relationship, you know?
Absolutely. But I think people are ready for those things. I mean, if you look at the new reality show about the drag queens, Beulah, even though our country is progressive, we still are quite conservative, and the audiences are like that. But you can see that they are having an amazing reaction to that, which is wonderful because, you know, it's a lot of makeup. Can you share a moment when an inclusive project or experience deeply resonated with you personally?
Can you hear me?
hear
Mike?
my please?
Can you hear me?
Yeah.
Okay. Sorry about that. I think for me that moment was when we shot the film Sixth Sense. I think inclusivity played a huge role there because the cast were people that were disabled, especially the character that was playing a younger version of me. He's visually impaired. So in the film, that's when I started seeing problems with my eye, and by using him in the story, it sort of like portrayed exactly what I was going through because he also has a similar problem that I have, and I also had challenges at the exact same age as him. So I feel like the project that we did with Canva Collectives does show and did incorporate a lot of inclusivity and as well as people from diverse backgrounds.
Thank you. Anybody else want to add something?
I just wanted to just add, I'm not sure if it's, it goes around in this question, but also just to add something that impacted was actually one of the shows that my friend Katrin said that I must watch is Love on the Spectrum. Now, I think this is a show that also proves that a show about persons with disabilities can be such a huge success globally that people wanted to see more, you know, dialing in because love is such a common theme and people are interested. Like, how do persons with disabilities actually date? Do we have sex? You know, these kind of questions people want to know. You know? So having content like that shows that it's absolutely nonsense to say people won't be interested in watching people who are different.
And I also think like the themes of love, themes of acceptance and rejection are universal and everybody can resonate with those kinds of things. Right. What is the responsibility of creators and media professionals in reflecting the diversity of the world around them?
I would think honesty for my part.
Yeah, authentic representation matters.
It's fascinating. I heard someone talk about this in terms of, you know, when you get asked, it's the same topic I spoke about earlier, but it's like the topic of being told what to make, right? When you tell authentic stories, when you look at it as like a time capsule, because you tell the story within that time period, you can reflect on it and it has like some sort of historical relevance in terms of what's happening in the country, in the communities at that time. So I think that's why it's important is then like the stuff is actually somewhat factual, you know? So it's important to sort of tell the stories authentically because then it actually has viable input for future filmmakers, for future audiences as well. They get to have an understanding of what was going on in that time period, in that decade, you know, in those years. So yeah.
Fantastic. How would you assess the current state of accessibility in film, art, and media for people with disabilities? Are we doing enough?
I want to take this on the art aspect. I think that there is change. It goes back to what I was saying that your theaters and museums and your galleries have your ramps and your elevators and your accessible restrooms. And I've seen the incorporation of persons with disabilities in key roles, so as writers, as producers, as curators. But I feel like we can still do more.
Yeah, I definitely think that more can be done from the film producing side. But I think also as artists, it's with disabilities or just artists who are different regardless. I think it's also important for us to keep our positivity and our motivation up by knowing that at the end of the day, work on your craft, become excellent in your craft, and you will go to new heights. I mean, we look at people like Black Coffee. How many people know that Black Coffee's got a disability? Very few people actually know that Black Coffee has got a disability. He's only got one arm that works. But no one cares about that because it's Black Coffee and because his music just flipping, makes us jive. So also as artists, it's our responsibility to not allow the outside opinions or the challenges to prohibit us from trying to be excellent.
Yeah.
Because we think, oh, what's the use because no one else is going to watch me.
It's very much back to the thing of wanting to be hired for your merit.
I think with that question, you can answer it very quickly is, can every sort of person with a disability consume that content? Do they have accessibility to it? If the answer is no, then not enough is being done. You know what I mean? So I think it's the education aspect is, we just need to understand how every sort of person with a disability can access this. What do they need? Is it being done? If no, then it's not good enough,
Absolutely. And I think a lot more can be done.
Yes.
And by all of us, I mean, I've seen myself guilty of that as well. When I post a picture, for example, then often I forget to add in the description, the image description, where I can just write a little alternative text over there so that people with visual impairments, if they've got a screen, can actually understand what the picture's about. And yet I'm an advocate of inclusion. And then I've got to catch up, flip, I forgot to add that. So it's an adjustment for all of us.
Yes.
But I think as long as we are conscious of it and we try to do better.
I think that takes me to my next question. How is technology changing the way that people with disabilities engage with the media and the arts? What innovations are making the biggest impact?
I think the innovations that are making a big impact is the revolution of AI, especially with the development of smart glasses, collaboration between Meta and Ray-Ban. For me, that's very moving because it has a camera sensor where you point at something and then ChatGPT on the background tells you what it is. And there's also innovation when it comes to music production softwares. I'm aware that they're currently incorporating accessibility like a text to screen reader and as well as resizable GUIs on their softwares. Because before then, I think 10 years ago in music production softwares, there wasn't a dark mode and there wasn't, you couldn't really zoom anything unless you buy a bigger screen. And you understand? So every time you needed to get a quality of life, you had to buy an extra feature. You had to buy a special keyboard. It's nice to see that all of these functionalities are now being integrated into the operating system. Like for example, if you buy a MacBook Pro and if you highlight the wording and then press Command Escape, it starts reading. Not a lot of people know that, but it's been around for like 5 years now. So yes, there is improvement. It's slow. I would like for these tech developers to also be much more inclusive in incorporating users that are disabled, so they can find feedback as to what to improve and yeah.
Like disability beta testing.
Yes, disability beta testing. Yes.
I like that. I mean, we also have to look in the past because so many people also, don't realize that when you cater, particularly in the technology space for persons with disabilities, you cater for a whole host of other people. So when we speak about subtitles, that was created for persons with disabilities. But yet when we look at the stats, they show that content with subtitles get higher views than content without, because maybe you're in a noisy place and you can't listen, so now you can just read. Maybe you don't understand the language that great. So us linguists will know, maybe if you had read it, then you can follow along and you can teach yourself that language if you're in a foreign country. Audio books that was made for the blind people. And yet all of us, these days, it's so commonplace that we're listening to audio in the car, we're listening to audio. Automated doors was created for persons with disabilities. So when we look at all of these technologies that have been created and will continue to create, I see a great revolution and uprise for persons with disabilities once we are able to use these technologies at a cheaper price, because that's also been the thing. It's not that the technology is not there, it's some of the technologies are also very expensive.
Yeah.
How can we ensure that people with disabilities are not just consumers of media, but active participants in creating it?
I think companies need to work with persons with disabilities and on all levels. So I'm thinking your employees, your team members, your leaders, they need to be involved in the decision making of each and every project. Yeah, I think that's how we can actually ensure it. Yeah, through collaborations as well.
I think having an accessibility consultant on projects, or even slates for films and these sort of things. I think just being at the table, with the people that actually make those decisions, that's where there'll be a waterfall,
Yeah.
So just having us at the table, that's the first step, I guess.
Absolutely. From the very beginning.
Yes.
And sometimes it only happens way after, and then you get a watered down product, and it's like, meh. It goes like that. Right. I want to open some questions to the floor. Yes.
Oh, can we get another mic, please?
Oh, here you go.
It's not a question, it's a 2 cents. Coming from a community psychologist point of view, and going back to your latest question about how can we ensure that they're not consumers and they're participants. So in community psychology, usually when there's a problem, we do a needs assessment. So I think that's something that business leaders, principals at school, and all aspects of life or all environments need to do actively, because we know South Africa is so diverse. We have people with disabilities, intellectual disabilities. We should do a needs assessment annually, every 2 years. What do they need? What do they need to see? How are they feeling? How is the self-esteem? How can we boost their confidence? Because there's, HR always runs like your employee wellness for able people, No one's checking in on, maybe they are, but I feel like we have to accept that they probably have deeper emotional problems because of their experience. So things like needs assessment and doing like your one-on-one in your small little business, in your big corporate business, so that you can be in tune of what they need, because maybe what they need isn't more content creators. Maybe they need a textbook about how can I build my self-esteem as someone with a disability. So I think having, your annual or consistent, being consistently in tune of what people with disabilities need in our homes and societies. Yeah.
Thank you.
Yeah, I want needs assessments annually or every 5 years or whatever would be really great, because Vida, you saying more needs to be done, but it would be really cool to see a graph and see how far have we come, what have we improved in, and where do we still need to go. Else we're just kind of grabbing around in the dark, and we can't really, we need a map, and we need to kind of map out what needs to be done and what has been done, and where do we go from here.
just to add in that, because it speaks to exactly that, and also what I mentioned earlier on about the training, I feel that almost every industry body needs to have a disability desk. A group of people with various disabilities that work in that industry that can be used to consult with on movies, used to consult with in the, so if, like, where's that industry body that, ish, you know, we've got this mandate we need to meet and now we don't know how to do it, let's call the Ghostbusters. You know what I mean? Like,
Absolutely. Another question from the audience?
Hello, mine is also kind of a comment. Also, thank you all for speaking. So I think that I'm going to speak on not just disability, but also different types of inclusivity. I think it's very sad that we don't, okay, I don't know what everybody does here, but it's sad that we don't have like the NFVF and SABC and stuff sitting here listening to these conversations, because I've wanted to pitch, for example, a story about, you know, like a person who has a disability but living life. You know what I mean? Like, it's just a normal story, and the person happens to have a disability. But the whole time you feel like, oh no, I can't do it, because they're going to be like, yeah, but like, why would you put someone, let's say, who has a hearing disability without it being about the hard strives of not being able to hear in the space, you know what I mean? And it's like, we just need a space where people can just be people and have a disability so we can learn. Because as you've mentioned, the BBC and Britain in general, I've noticed, do it really, really well, where you can watch something and there'll be like a little person, and that's it, they're just living their life. And that would be great if it was here in South Africa and we could have these conversations where they hear that we want these things. Or even like for myself, I'm South African, but I'm Malawian, right? And we don't really have a place in film, like unless we're criminals. Like, we don't really have a place in film where I can see someone like myself who's like, I don't really know my culture. I don't know what that feels like to, you know, I'm in another place, but I'm from another place. And, you know, I live life in this country. I exist, and there's so many of us probably in this room, but we don't have these spaces to tell these stories, because it's like, why would anyone want to hear that? And we do want to hear that, and these conversations do exist. And people sitting here listening to you talk about these things, but the people who don't want to give us money to make these stories aren't sitting in these spaces to listen to this. I'm sorry, I'm only speaking from a film perspective, because that's as good as I can do, because I'm a filmmaker. But yeah, I think it would be interesting if they would actually hear that we want these stories to be told, you know, so they could actually be told. But yeah.
Thank you. Anyone want to add something to that?
No, I think that's like a huge problem. You think about it, is sort of like, why would a disabled actor or an actor with a disability or any of these people want to enter the industry when they can only be typecast as their disability? Like you said, that's because unfortunately there's a lot of ignorance that you have to go through in this industry with people. But like, there's nothing, it doesn't make any sense why there should be a problem. It's like, there should be opportunities for actors with disabilities to participate in films and not have to address their disability. That's where the inclusion thing comes from. Inclusion is the goal of normality, that we all is just normal. Like with the news presenter, it doesn't need to be addressed. She's addressing the news. She doesn't need to address her arm. There's no need for it, you know. But I think that's the main thing is, because why would actors with disabilities want to even try and enter the industry? As hard as it is for an actor in general, and for actors that are normal, without a disability, it's already hard for them to get roles. It must be impossible for actors with disabilities to get roles. So that's what the change needs to be, you know?
Do you want to add something?
absolutely.
Yeah.
Yeah, and also, you know, for members of the LGBTQI community as well, in terms of being able to see that representation, you know, on TV. I mean, we know RuPaul has been one of the instrumental figures in bringing us some amazing content that we all bloody enjoy, and that's so hilariously funny. And it's just, you know, having that, having been brave to get out there and hopefully open up the way so people can see it can be done.
Absolutely. And as a drag queen, it's wonderful to see things like that. But I mean, at the same time, there's leaps and bounds to go. Like, sometimes I still feel nervous walking out of the house, like, is this going to be the day when something happens? But I mean, it does help with that and getting it out there and getting it into people's minds that all kinds of people do exist. I have one more question that I want to hear from all of you before we wrap up. It's been wonderful talking to you. Okay, before I have a question, I see we have a question over there.
Good afternoon, everyone. Kindly allow me just to share my story. I won't be long. My name is Nobuzwe Mapipa, that's my surname. I live in Guguletu. I'm a parent. I've got three children, and then 2 sons, and my late daughter. My daughter passed away in 2019. Her name was Sisipo. So I would like first to thank God for the privilege of being part of this program. Yeah, first of all, what I want to share, what is important, Sisipo was born on the 27th of January, 1999. She was born with a condition, multiple congenital abnormalities. This includes loss of hearing and sense of sight. And then these abnormalities resulted in development delay. The doctor said she would need extensive medical intervention and special care of duration, and my daughter fell under cerebral palsy. And now, fast forward, my daughter was admitted at Woodside Special Care Center in Doornbosch, where became permanent residence. And she was also well cared. This journey was far from being an easy one for me as a parent, a single parent. I was filled with many unanswered questions. I asked God, why me? Fast forward, on the community front, I was afraid and ashamed of what people should or would think of me and how would gossip about me. And thereafter, I therefore always kept myself indoors, not socializing with people for almost 4 years. The job that I was doing, I was in HR department and payroll department. That was very need, attention, dealing with people's salaries. Nonetheless, something I just want to also there to mention in terms of my purpose and in the community. My purpose was to create awareness by promoting a society in which people living with disabilities would feel included and enjoy full integration, independence, and civil rights, and also to change certain misconceptions about persons living with disability and help families on how to deal with this disability. So what I'm trying to say, I have a passion with people with disabilities, and I respect them. In as much I'm busy with my studies at UCT, the postgrad that I'm busy with, study disabilities because that is my passion and also where I think it's my purpose, whereby, in closing, a pain experience has now turned out to be empowering a program for me. A painful experience has now made me to have a closer relationship with God. A painful experience has now opened doors that I would never thought it would be open for my ministry. A painful experience has now become a blessing to me, my family, and my church community. So I respect people with disabilities. I have passion about it in as much if I could get assistance, because you find out at the age of from 18 and above, they are struggling to get accommodation. And they are very good in their skills. If I could get someone could help me or fund me so that there will be even information center or institutions for them, something that will develop them, not to stay at home because it's frustrating. Even the roads are not accessible, for them. We depend only to Dalarite. Dalarite is the only transport that is available for persons with disabilities. They can't go to the buses, local buses, onto the taxis, There is no that full attention that is given to them. I think now this is about time, really for them to be respected. I thank you.
Thank you so much for sharing.
Thank you, Sisi.
Anybody like to comment on that?
Yes, I would, because something that you pointed to that was so important is the factor of shame that often gets felt by our own families within ourselves. Me as a person, when I first became disabled, as a person with a wheelchair, I felt an immense amount of shame. And I was like, how are people now going to perceive me, right? Are they going to see me as less than now because I'm no longer that full capability? I even know that shame that would exist within families and stuff, where families are keeping their own persons back because of the fear of what they'll find out there and the stigmatization. And so it's so important within families, you know, to come and say, I used to feel this, but now I became enlightened and now I'm a champion for that. And for more people as well, if you have persons with disabilities in your family, go out, have fun, be inconvenient. Because the world is supposed to change. We are not supposed to be locked up at home.
Absolutely. Actually ties into the last question that I wanted to ask everyone. How can inclusive media challenge the social stigmas that still surround disabilities, both visible and invisible?
Well, I was just having a chat with Ati earlier about these vitiligo campaigns. I can't recall the model's name, but there's this really beautiful model that I think was in like Play, the bra, what is it called? Play Girl, Play, yeah. And I, you know, my mom has vitiligo, and the shame that was that she started to encounter when became midlife, and she just stopped going out and she stopped socializing, and eventually like she's just literally locked up at home because she can't overcome this embarrassment and shame. And I now see so many younger people out and proud and walking around because I think, you know, campaigns like that one where this model was put on a ramp and, you know, given the spotlight and really kind of thrived in that environment and really kind of created a lot more comfort around looking different, you know. So that was something that I think was really important.
I think from my side, the shame thing is such an interesting topic and such an intrinsic thing within having a disability. You know, like from my side, I think it's important for us as within the community that we are representatives and that we actually not promote but educate people. I think like from my side, like the shame thing is very real. Like I was diagnosed about 3 years ago with autism, being on the spectrum. And when I initially got diagnosed, you have to make changes to your life for your quality of life. You know, this is who you are, someone you have to identify as. And I told about 7 people that I was close with, and about 3 of them stopped talking to me after I told them. And there's this thing within autism called relationship trauma, because we have people in our lives and out of our lives very quickly, you know. And like with myself, like with this panel, I didn't tell people, there's people who are in this room and there's people that are at this conference that I'm very close with that don't know I have a disability. And when they were asking about the panel and what you're talking about, I was like, no, it's inclusivity and representation. But I didn't say. I had to tell one of my close friends this morning, this is the story, I'm autistic, that's what I'm doing here, this is why I'm speaking. And the shame is so real, like I feel it, and I was like thinking about, before I came here, I was like, you know, like as much as people are gonna think what they think, you know, you gotta kind of say you're master and carry on with your life, you know. But it's very true. But something like I feel personally that I need to fix is not have that shame, is we need to talk about it to people. That's how they'll understand us, you know?
Absolutely. Anyone else?
Can I get a mic, please?
I totally agree with the shame. It's very real. Also, when I got diagnosed with retinitis pigmentosa at the age of 24, I lost an awful lot of amount of people that I thought were my close friends, even some family members as well. You could see they had that shame towards me. You know, they kept on asking, "Are you ever going to have children? Are you going to get married?" You know, so it is very real, but I don't let that get to me. You know, and I'm glad that we're having this conversation right now. Which gives us an opportunity to actually voice the challenges that disabled people go through. And like you said, shame is a huge thing, and we need to really assess that and find another way around that, because we can't be walking around and looking at disabled people and feeling shame. You understand? Because at the end of the day, those are our fellow human beings.
So I got taught this by an occupational therapist. It's like we don't want compassion. I mean, we don't want empathy from people. Wait, I'm messing this up. So we don't want compassion, because compassion is you have to know what it's like to be in someone else's shoes. You know, you want people to understand what you're going through, but not like you can't understand what we're going through fully. You know, that's the one thing is So don't baby us. Don't, treat us that way, Yeah.
Thank you so much. That's our time for this panel. I want to thank all of the panelists so much for your time. I've really enjoyed this. So please give it up for Taryn Tomlinson on the end over there, Amelka Patel, Athenkosi Kwinana, Mishimo, and Varen Vadivelu. Thank you for coming.